everybody to another new member webinar, and hopefully there's at least 1 or 2 new members here. That's great. That's great. Well, I see at least 2, 3 that have all raised hands. So fantastic. I'm going to thank Larry for organizing tonight's content, which he will tell you more about. I'm going to ask everybody, including the presenters, when you're not presenting, to mute, because we're going to record this, by the way. So if you don't want to be recorded, you can turn your video off. But if anybody makes any noise or moves a chair, it steals the speaker view screen, and we record in speaker view. So if you're not speaking, mute yourself. If you want to ask a question, I mean, Larry, that's going to be up to you how you want to do that, whether you want people to hold questions or break in. One trick, rather than having to actually unmute yourself with your cursor, is you can just hold your space bar down. And on most computers, holding your space bar down, while you hold it down, you will be unmuted.
Yeah, and you might be able to mute everybody as moderator.
Yeah, I can, but I don't want to do that because I want people to be able to break the mute.
Well, you can always do that. I'm in another group that meets weekly, and the moderator mutes everybody. But if you want something, you can do this. You can unmute yourself.
Oh.
Yes, I have that at the bottom, and I'll do that when we're getting going. So I think that's all we need for introduction. I'm going to say that it's an advertisement. There's going to be one more new member webinar in this series, and then we're going to end this series. And the next one, I'll tell you more about it on Buzz, but it's basically going to be an all-in. Everybody is going to present, and it's going to be a show and tell of any kind of cool gizmo or gadget or something that's from the non-kayaking world that you're using for kayaking purposes, or you want to tell a trick about how you wash your dry suit or whatever. And people can do it by holding up stuff to the screen. You can take a photo or a little video, whatever works for you. And I'll put more details into a Buzz message within the next day or 2. Okay, Larry, so much for the advertising. Take it away.
Okay, so I'd like to start off by complimenting Steve for doing a fabulous job holding these webinars. The 6 presenters tonight will try not to tarnish his reputation too much. So I was kind of aghast when I saw his little announcement saying that there's 103 years of experience in the 6 presenters tonight. It just means we've had more time paddling and making more mistakes than most people. And we're gonna sort of tell you how we've weeded out, or come to like mellow paddles within the Bay Area by going through a number of factors. And in terms of questions, go ahead, since we're going through 3 Bay areas, the South, the Central, and the North Bay. As the presenters make their presentations, go ahead and ask a question or put it on chat. So today I did a Jen led a paddle, and it would be considered the most mellow paddle you could imagine, but it went from Ferry Point around Angel Island, and I think the big wave was like 3 inches tall. So you might consider that a really mellow paddle, but in fact, those of you who've been out there know it can get choppy. So what we're going to do is talk about factors that make a more mellow paddle and where they are in the bay. So, and to do that, oh, hold on. Sorry. I'm going to bring up. So does everybody see this? Okay,
Yep.
so
yeah,
so we're going to just quickly go over the factors that you can find on the BASK trip planner, because you want to know, well, I want to go someplace, and where's my starting point, where's my end point, and of course, trip planner is a great thing to find that out. So here's Berkeley, here's the details section, and if you also look down, the details here, but there's also look down below, there's the water trail. It's even the Bay Area Water Trail. Actually, Penny Wells is quite involved in it. We'll be talking about that tomorrow in a separate webinar. But here's just part of the page of the water trail information. So you get a ton of information online of where you're starting, whether it's a boat ramp, what the parking is like, what time does the parking lot open. So it's awesome information. And of course, you want to know what the conditions are. So Berkeley is a great place to launch from. They've redone their ramp. There's now a washing area, but also look to see what is going to be the condition when I leave. So if you look over here at, what is this? At this point, there's 2 foot tide in the Berkeley Marina area. So that's fine, but look over here. Look at it, it's -2. And as I learned out the hard way, that means mud, mud, mud. You can find out all those details. And then of course, if you click on these little blue balloons within the bay or on the trip planner, these indicate what the current's going to be in that area. So here it is for that day, showing the highs, the flood, the ebb. And to tell the difference, so here's that point we were just looking at, and that was once less than, because it's close to shore, and this is something we'll talk about in terms of easy mellow trips, because it's close to shore. Notice this was less than 1 knot. Let me go back for a second here. It doesn't really even come to it. Here's 0 knots. It's less than 1. But if we go back to this, notice over here, when I clicked on this dot, notice now I'm over 1. I'm out in the bay further. I'm at Treasure Island. And now I've got more than 1 knot to deal with. So that is basically a real quick and dirty introduction to how you use the trip planner to decide where you're going to leave from, what time. And from any questions about that? So at this point,
I'd like to also point out, you can check out what the weather is.
yeah,
The planner too.
yeah. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Jim. Jim?
So you'll have to unshare your screen now.
I thought I did. Hold on. Sorry. Technical difficulty here. Does that do it?
No.
No, stop share. Okay, got it. Okay, sorry.
All right. So I live in Menlo Park, which is about halfway down between San Francisco and San Jose, and so we paddle a lot in the South Bay. Margot and I started paddling about 10 years ago, and at that time we had a full boat double, which is more like a wreck boat, no spray skirt. So we know a lot about, at that point, a lot about the flat water that's down here. And so we're gonna just go over some of the places that we know about, that we used to go to a lot, still do go to some of them. All right, now, what do you see anything?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
picture.
it's perfect.
All right, good. So I've kind of divided up the kinds of places that you can paddle down here into 3 categories. The first is freshwater. We have several places, and we'll go into that. The second is brackish. So this is non-tidal, but still somewhat salty. And then the third is actually in the bay itself. So we're going to start right in here. So, when we first started paddling, this is a wonderful place, Stevens Creek Reservoir. It doesn't open until April, so but it's up above Cupertino, and it's small. It's probably 1.5 miles from the links or something like that, but it's a beautiful place. And the water is reasonably warm. There are Quagga inspections, so I think you even have to have a reservation. You make that reservation through the parks. It's a Santa Clara County, so you can find this on the web to get a reservation, and there's money involved, but it's a wonderful place. So I highly recommend it. Now, then the second place is that I'm going to talk about very briefly is Lexington Reservoir. It's off of Highway 17 going over to Santa Cruz. I have never paddled there because it's always been closed, but this year it's open. You have to have a reservation. It's another wonderful reservoir. It's bigger than Stevens Creek, but and so it should be a really nice place to paddle. As I said, I've never been there. I plan on. So let's go on here. Quarry Lakes, it's over in Fremont. It's another really nice place to paddle. There's an entrance fee and again, Quagga mussel inspection fee. But it's the lake is pretty big. Here's a fuzzy picture I lifted off the web. The lake is pretty big and it's cold water. There's a beach, but you're not allowed on the beach with your kayak. You got to leave from the launch ramp, and then you can paddle around in the lake. It's I'd say maybe halfway between Lexington Reservoir and Stevens Creek in terms of how big it is. But it's very cold water for some reason.
Isn't it water from the Sierra, isn't it?
It comes, I know it's the creek that comes down from Livermore, so I'm not sure why it's so cold. And then we have to talk about Lake Del Valle. It's not really in the South Bay, it's over in Livermore, but it's a wonderful place. Again, there's an entrance fee and there's a Quagga mussel fee and there's a launch fee. So you wind up spending, I don't know, $10 or $15 to get in. But it's another wonderful place. It can be windy in the afternoon. It's a long, narrow lake that if the wind is coming right down the lake, it can whistle through here. There's camping. You can have boat-in campsites here. So we have to talk a little bit about Quagga mussel inspections. If you've never gone through one, it's important that you have everything absolutely dry. If they find any moisture in any boats, they look into the hatches, they look into the ends of the paddles, they basically can look anywhere. And if they find any moisture anywhere, you fail. So you can get around this at Lake Del Valle because there's a concession that will rent kayaks. But yeah, so I don't think we've ever actually failed, but it's pretty iffy sometimes. They're very careful.
Jim, I just want to add to that. In some places where they do the inspection, it's not just about dry, it's also you can't have any sand in your boat. We were at Yellowstone and there's just a little sand, and the sand can look like some of the invasive species that they don't want. So they were very unhappy with even like a little bit of sand in the boat.
Well, I've never come across that, but thanks for the tip. So let's see, I'm going to go back here. So that's the end of the freshwater. There are others. There's a lake farther south that I've never been to, south of San Jose. And there are some very nice lakes up in the East Bay, which maybe some other people will talk about. But don't overlook these freshwater places. They're wonderful places to paddle, and the scenery is great. And you can pull out and on the beach and
you
have
don't
lunch.
have to rinse your gear.
You don't have to rinse your gear. That's right. It's all fresh water. So
Can I ask
now
a question real quick? As far as I understand, a lot of those reservoirs are no body contact affairs. Does that mean you're not allowed to, for example, roll your kayak or anything, or how does that work?
So I can speak to Stevens Creek Reservoir. You're not supposed to get in the water. However, you paddle around the bend from the put-in, and here is this tree with a rope on it, and there are kids swinging and playing in the water. So I don't understand this exactly, but and Quarry Lakes is the same way. You're not supposed to get out of your boat. And Lake Del Valle, I don't know. There's a beach in Lake Del Valle, so that's not a problem.
We've seen people swimming there. We've seen long distance swimmers there.
Well, at
and
Lake Del Valle, there's a beach, so of course they
Yeah.
can get in the water.
Yeah, in Del Valle you can swim, yes.
Yeah, right.
And
But I think that both Stevens Creek, I'm not sure about Lexington, I've never been there, but Quarry, they both discourage, although Quarry Lakes has a beach also, so I may be wrong about that. So I don't know. You should look at the website. That's the key, I think.
But Stevens Creek, if you did something like, it's like Jim fell, he capsized once in Stevens Creek, and we rescued him, and nobody like gave him a fine. So I'm sure if you just rolled your boat, that's fine. If you went swimming or did a major rescue practice, that would be different.
Well, yeah. All right. So let's go on. So the next category is brackish. So this is actually not on the trip planner. I don't exactly know why, but Shoreline Lake Park, it's a park in Mountain View. It's next to the amphitheater, and it's a nice lake. In the summertime, they have kids camp there. It's covered with kids playing in all sorts of watercraft, sail boards, stand-up paddle boards, sailboats. There's a launch fee. There's no Quagga inspection since it's salt. It's not tidal though. So it's a nice place. I know that Dee Dixon has gone up there and done rolling practice. I don't know what the bottom's like. It's not a very deep lagoon. But again, it's looks like a great place to me. One of the great things about it is a cafe right next to the lake, which serves better than average food. It's quite nice. I've been there many times in the cafe. All right, let's go on here. Parkside Aquatic Park. Again, this is not on the trip planner. Aquan, there used to be a water store in San Carlos called Aquan, and they had a boat ramp or a boathouse there. So we actually took our, oops, wrong way. I actually took our sea kayaking 1 and 2 in this slough. And here's a picture of the beach with a play area. And there we are. This is about 10 years ago. And we took our sea kayaking 1 and 2 in those 2 folding kayaks. And this is the Seal Slough. Very, very nice. You can paddle north all the way up to the dam. Going south, you can paddle ways, and then it turns into a private lagoon. So you have to turn around and come back. But it's warm. In the summertime, the water quality can be iffy. So that's a bad thing. But if the water is okay, it's a great place to be. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, so now we're going to move into saltwater. So here, as Larry pointed out at the beginning, or you really need to keep track of the tides. The South Bay is very shallow. And so at tides less than, say, 2 or 3 feet, you're going to wind up seeing a lot of mud. Some places you can get in under with the lower tides than that, but a lot of places you can't. So El Viso is the first place. It's a really nice boat launch. There's a free parking. It's got a high dock and a low dock and a boat ramp. It goes out on Guadalupe Creek, which is just a narrow waterway with reeds on both sides. You can see in this picture. So it can be lower tides kind of boring because it's a narrow waterway with weeds on both sides, and it's about, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles out to the bay. So but you can put in there and you can paddle up and down the creek, and it's definitely an easy paddle. There's very little current in the summertime anyway. Let's go on here. So the next place up going north is Palo Alto. There's a really nice boat ramp. It's got a gravel parking lot, free. No, of course, there's no Quagga since it's salt. And here you can put in, and the bay is only about half a mile out from here. So you can either turn right and paddle around in the sloughs. It's not very much slough to paddle around in. So you're not going to spend more than probably an hour exploring. But if you go left out into the bay, the railroad, the old railroad bridge, which is a great destination. It's about maybe 3 miles, I suppose. And if the wind's not blowing hard, it's a really nice place to go. Just north of this bridge is the place where the Hetch Hetchy crosses the bay, and so you can paddle underneath the Hetch Hetchy aqueduct, and then come back along the shore if you want. Although again, if you have less than maybe 2 feet of water, you can't get too close to the shore because it gets really shallow. And then there's Redwood City, and this is the go-to, at least for Margot and myself lately. It offers a lot of paddling, a lot of opportunities of all sorts. This is the picture of the boat ramp. There's a low dock as well to the right, which you can't see. But this is Redwood Creek off to the left here, and it goes out to the bay. It's about 2 miles or so out to the bay. But there are lots of opportunities for paddling. This is on a very high tide. This is probably an 8-foot tide. And at those kinds of levels, the islands flood and you can go places that you normally can't. But and here, Margot put this together, and there's a link in the chat on how to download this. But let's see if my cursor works. Yeah, it does. Good. So here's the put-ins right here. And so the one paddle that we do reasonably often is to go up here on a high tide. You can go through the middle of Bear Island here, come out into Corkscrew Slough, around here through the flow restrictor into this is a flooded area of Bear Island. Down here is Smith Slough, another flow restrictor, come around, look in here. And that's about 6 miles or so. And it's a tide, if the tide's 7 or 8, you go through this slough with a shortcut. Otherwise, you can Corkscrew Slough, you can get through at any time. Although this area, you probably need 2.5 or 3 feet to get through.
Yeah, I wouldn't go through there under.
Yeah, so on a low tide, you can just paddle all the way to the end, come down Steinberger and back through Smith. It's a little longer, but very nice. Another paddle is to come up here is Corkscrew Slough, or come this way and up. And then this little slough right here, and there's a straight out to the bay, and then you can come around and back into Redwood Creek. This area in here where it's white is a shell beach. It's again, tides above, say, probably 5 feet. You can get on the shell beach. Lower tides, there's going to be a lot of mud between the water and the shell beach. But just a couple of weeks ago, we went out. The South Bay Wreck is out there. Is out. Oops, I'm trying to point at the screen. That doesn't work. It's out this arrow here. Anyway, there's an area of shell, a shell mound, shell beach that comes up at about 4 feet. And so this is a reasonably large area that you can walk on. And it's since it's covered with shell, you sink in about 1 inch or so, but it's not muddy. So if this is not available, this would be, because at lower tides, you can get here. And there's more, because there's this whole area to the south as well. You can go down West Point Slough through this little cut here and come around this way. Although again, this area in here is very low. You need 4 feet or so of water to get through here. Or you can come all the way down here. This is a longer paddle. Come all the way down to Bayfront Park, which is in Menlo Park. Come out here and this way. That's probably a 10+ mile paddle. So anyway, there's just lots of opportunities of paddling here. So highly recommended. Let's see.
Oh,
Here, let's see. Did I go buy one? Yeah. So here's the South Bay Wreck. It's about 5 miles or so from the put in, 2.5 miles out to the bay, and then another 2.5 mile, that's open bay crossing. In fact, you have to cross the, let's go back here. It turns out that it really doesn't show on this map, but there's a deep water channel in the South Bay. And it's quite narrow and it's quite close to the east side. So you're paddling along in water that's no more than 5 or 6 feet deep until you get to the deep water channel, and then it goes down 30 or 40 feet. But it's narrow. But the point of this is, in order to get over to the wreck, you have to cross that. So if there's wind waves, they get more interesting when you get into the deep water. So, but it's still there. This is a ship that was scuttled in World War II so that people from Moffett Field could have bombing practice. So, USS Thompson. All right, so that's really all the presentation I have. All these links that you see here are in the chat, or you can just email and I'll send them to you. Let's see, I think there's one more slide in here. Nope, there isn't. So now again, if there are any questions, I'll answer those, and if not, you can go on to the next person. Let's see, I guess I should unshare here. There we go. So that was a quick overview of what's happening in the South Bay.
Okay. So now we're going to go to the Central Bay, where there's a little more exposure to current and winds. I'm going to start with a very simple paddle that's, oops, slippery little devil. This, of course, is San Francisco. Let me see. Oh, excuse me. This is down the new park. Boy, I'm forgetting the name of it. Blanking out here. Does anybody remember the name of the one with the beach?
Crane Cove.
Crane Cove, thank you. Thank you, guys. Crane Cove is a new beach. It's a wonderful place. Really well designed, just opened by the Port of San Francisco. Really nice sand, everything but parking. So that's the problem with that. There's other sites you can launch from. Uss Creek has a little parking, but I was there about 6 months ago, and it's really bad condition. It's kind of scummy. So, but this is really kind of interesting because you go by the industrial cranes in San Francisco and then up past under the bridge. And I don't know if people know, but this is a terrific little landing spot. There's the ferry building. This is Pier 1.5. That's right near a restaurant if you want to go high end when restaurants opened up again. Oh, actually, they do have outdoor dining. There's a really nice restroom. And I think there is a plaque on the women's room that says, Larry, do not use this restroom, because the last time I was there, I mistakenly went in the women's restroom. And as I was washing my hands, this woman came in and started screaming at me. I was in the women's restroom, and I immediately ran out, and she ran out, and then she goes out to the Embarcadero, which is the most heavily used walkway in San Francisco, and points back at me screaming, he was in the women's restroom. He was in the women's restroom. So I think I learned that lesson. So moving over to the East Bay, this of course is Alameda Island. And this is my go-to, really easy. Don't even think of currents or conditions because it's always accessible. I use this as training when I was going to be rowing a raft in the Grand Canyon. So I needed something that I didn't have to think about every day. So I would
over here.
So I would start usually either at JLAC over here, or this is JLAC's an Oakland facility. This is Grand Boat Ramp. Real easy to launch from these places. And I would paddle up. This is really cool. You go by all the cranes, the tugboats. You do have to watch out for tugboats and other big ships coming in or out. And of course, the Oakland Ferry leaves from here. So it's a little bit hairy sometimes with boats coming and going. And it looks like I just sort of skidded over land here, did a little portage, but it's really cool. Oops. You go out to the bay, sorry. You go out to the bay and all of a sudden you see the anchorage with all the big freighters and everything. So it's a very cool sort of industrial sort of paddle. But you can also launch from the same places and then go in the opposite direction. This is another launch spot. This is Tidewater boat ramp. And then there's a number of landing sites in East Bay Parks. This is Martin Luther King Park, so you can land. So it's a much more natural site. This bay is somewhat exposed. I've never really had a problem, but I've heard people say that they've been there where it gets kind of windy because you could see the winds can come right through here. But I don't see it as a big problem. Moving further up, this is, of course, somewhat exposed because if you go this direction, you're facing right at the Golden Gate Bridge. So the westerly winds come right in here. But there are lots of spots to launch from. I didn't start my little graphic here down here, but this is Emeryville, Berkeley, Albany Beach. I think that's Point Isabel, right? Vincent Park, Ferry Point. So you could go either direction. All these pretty much have bathrooms and facilities. Berkeley has a really nice wash area now. They have a new ramp. And this is all improved here. I just paddled out of here last week. This is all problem here is parking. This has a lot of parking. But as I pointed out earlier, this could get muddy if it's a negative tide. So there's a lot of options here. Then you go in here, this channel, I didn't put a paddle. A lot of people do a paddle around Brooks Island, but I just stayed on the inside here, a little more protected. I did a paddle last week where this was all very, very calm. And then once I came out here, because of the westerly exposure going back to Albany Beach, it was kind of choppy. So this is really easy. So this, because of the fetch here can really be somewhat choppy, but it also can be really easy, especially in the morning hours. It's really easy. So
Beautiful views of the Golden Gate.
yeah. So at this point, I'm gonna, David, you want to get going here? Let me stop share. It's all yours. But David's going to talk about paddles in the Marin side. Am I not?
You're all set, David. We can see it.
There it is. Oh, okay. Unmute. Okay, there we go. I'm going to cover several launches in the Marin side, going from north to south. When I first started paddling, I rented kayaks from Sea Trek down in Sausalito and paddled in Richards Bay most of the time. And I'll get to that toward the end. The first place I'd like to mention is China Camp State. It's part of the state park. It's on San Pedro Road in Marin, easy to get to from 101 or from all the other points in Marin. There's a fee. There's a bathroom, changing rooms. It's a historic spot too, so there's even a little museum to look at. It's a gravel beach, a great gravel beach that's good at almost all tides. Tide lower than 2 feet, you'd have to watch out. It gets pretty muddy. Picnic tables, and there's even an outdoor shower. And from China Camp, one of the nice paddles you can take is going from China Camp along the coast and back up into Gallinas Creek. And you can stop at this point, which is Buck's Landing. Get out, there's a little boat ramp there and have lunch and come back, or continue on and go up into Gallinas Creek and paddle that. You have to, again, watch out for wind. always check your currents and your tides and your winds for any of these paddles. Another route is also coming down from China Camp and wrapping around past McNears Beach and going around Pedro Point and into Loch Lomond. And I'll get to that launch next. Loch Lomond has picnic tables and boat ramps too. On this kind of a paddle, you need to watch out for winds coming from the south, because once you come around this point, it'll hit you in the face. So this is a lovely coast going up. It's all natural. There's a lot of scenic mountains you can take a look at. You can see all the way out up toward North Bay, out to Novato and that area. Next one is down at Loch Lomond. And Loch Lomond has plenty of parking. It's got a porta potty, a great boat ramp. And if I were to paddle out on the weekend, I wouldn't go out of the boat ramp. I'd go to the furthest east part of the marina where there is a little beach you can launch from and plenty of parking there too. The harbor master there loves kayakers, so he loves to see us putting in there. There's a great new market right there, so if you forgot your lunch, you can go in and buy it there. There's access from Loch Lomond. You can go up into the canal, which goes all the way back, all the way up to Highway 101. You see a lot of marinas in there. The houses are pretty. There's a kayak place, 101 Surf Sports, right down at this spot. And that's a lovely paddle. You can come out and on a nice day, you can paddle down to this area here, down to Starkweather. That's about, well, I think this round trip would be about 3.5, 4 miles. You can also come out and go through the Marin Islands and take a trip around them and then come back down here. Or this is a spot also that people like to go out and go through the Marin Islands and go further out to an island that I won't name, but that's a pretty exposed paddle. You should be more than a novice and have quite a bit of experience because you can run into a lot of wind and current. So that is Loch Lomond. Then we come down here to Windsurfer Beach. Windsurfer Beach is off of Sir Francis Drake, right near the Larkspur Ferry Terminal. And it has a porta potty there, no other facilities, a gravel beach that's good at all tides. One thing you have to look out for is the ferries that come in and out. But from there, you can go up into the Corte Madera Creek, and depending on the tide level, you can go all the way back toward San Anselmo, past the College of Marin. And it's a lovely flat water paddle, a lot of houses along there, some houseboats. And again, look out for the tide, make sure that it's flooding when you're going up and ebbing when you're coming back. Makes for a sweet ride. Another place that you can go from here is along this coastline. This is, I guess this is called San Rafael Bay. You go down along this coastline and make your way all the way down to, this is Paradise Beach. And that's quite a paddle. That's about I think that's about a 10-mile round trip. But it's pretty.
Rafael Bay is the one above the bridge.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know what they call this bay then. Maybe it's Corte Madera Bay. Maybe it's Nobody's Bay. So it's a beautiful area, easy to get in and out of. And again, like I said, it's all weather, all tides, all. You can go on a flood, you come out of here and go up and around under the San Rafael Bridge, and go back up to Loch Lomond, or just take a short paddle over to Windsurfer to Starkweather and come back. The next one is down in Sausalito. There are two of them down there. They're kind of side by side. One of them is, let's see, which one is this one? Dunphy Park, that's the one I was looking for. That's a newly remodeled park that has plenty of parking, doesn't have a boat ramp, but there's kind of a muddy beach that you can launch from. The beach that's closest to the parking lot is a little easier to get into. There's bathrooms, new bathrooms. You shouldn't launch there at a low tide because it'll be pretty muddy. And from there, you have all of Richardson Bay. So if it's, you can go all the way up Richardson Bay up to the marsh and back into this Bayfront Park up on at the very end of Richardson Bay in that area, and come back. And I think that's about a 4 or 5 mile round trip. Or from there, you can come back up to Strawberry Point, cross over along Strawberry Point, come up through here, and then make a left into this little lagoon along these houses, and come back in to this area where there's apartment buildings and stuff, and come back out. This area in here is a wildlife refuge, and it's off limits for most of the year. There's tons of birds that come in there, and the Audubon Club actually has a house along here somewhere. So I'd be careful about that. But you can also paddle from here across to Belvedere, and from Belvedere come down to Belvedere Point and go around from there into these little bays around Belvedere and Tiburon, and continue along out to, this is Kyle Cove, there's a beach here, and come back. That's about an 8 mile paddle. Again, tide and currents, very important to pay attention to. If it's a low tide and you can't launch from Dunphy, best place to go to would be the Turney Street public boat ramp. And the public boat ramp is good at all tides. Parking is a little bit sketchy. I'll show you where you can park from there. But if you're launching from the boat ramp, you come around Bridgeway and back in here. There's parking back here for, they say half a day, but we've parked there all day and never had a problem. So I'm telling you something that's illegal, but you can do. Also from Sausalito, from Dunphy or Turney Street, a nice way to go is to come around the western shore here, along Bridgeway and down around Sausalito, and come down through here, and you can actually go all the way to Horseshoe Cove and land there. Horseshoe Cove is a great destination. It's also a great put-in, but I wasn't going to go there yet. And then also from here, you can go over to Angel Island. And so it's a great spot to launch from. A lot of paddles go out of there. And I think that's about it.
First, I'd like to thank Steve for doing this, because I don't do PowerPoint and I don't share screens well, but this is the San Pablo Wildlife Area and the Napa River. The wildlife area is relatively new. It's only about 20 years old, maybe 10 years old. It was going to be developed by a company from Japan. They were going to take and go into our slough areas. They're going to dredge it to 80 feet, the sloughs, and dump all the spoils up onto the area just north of Highway 37 and build hundreds of houses. A coalition of folks didn't like it. People that would never talk to one another got together. We got it stopped. First, I think the Nature Conservancy bought the property and then the state got it. And now the feds own it and the feds have taken it all over and made the San Pablo Bay Wildlife Area. And there are, in this area, there are miles and miles and miles and miles of sloughs. There's the Dutchman Slough, the one I use all the time, South Slough, China Slough, Hudman Slough, Napa 1, Napa 2, Napa 3, Steamboat Slough, Mud Slough, and there's probably more. And these, you'll see all the part, all these dots on there are places that I start from or end up at. So let's go to the next slide and we'll see what the Napa River looks like. Steve, punch up the next one. The next, there we go. So you can see the San Pablo Wildlife Area, about 30 square miles of paddling, all ours now. Uss Corey is an old World War, post-World War destroyer that they pulled up on the shore. It's a great place to stop and have lunch. There's Night Island's fun to paddle around. Green Island, I don't like Green Island all that much for putting in and taking out. It's got good parking, it's got a restroom, but it's difficult to get the boats down to the water and back. You got Hoodaman, you got Cuttings Wharf, which is a really good place to explore the north half of this whole image right here. You get from Cuttings, you can go to Hoodaman, you can go to Wingo, you can go to Kennedy Park in Napa, and you can go up into Napa and have you can have lunch. So let's see what the next one is. I'm not sure which sequences. There we go. This is Night Island. It's just north of Vallejo, the Vallejo launch ramp, boat ramp in Vallejo. And if you just want a short paddle, you can, let's see how far it is. You can go up just to the bridge, Highway 37 bridge from the launch ramp. And yeah, it's about 2 miles up to the, it's up to 2 miles up to the Highway 37 bridge. And if you go around Night Island and all the way back down to the, all the way back down to the boat launch in Vallejo, it's about 13 miles. With the right tide, you can do it in like 3 hours easy. And when you're going around Night Island, there on the north side, there's a couple of places you can get out. You can't get out easily in the slough. This is Dutchman Slough, you see, going around to the left. You can't get out easily. They're doing a lot of restoration work over there. Tugs come in, they dump off a bunch of mud, they pump it out into the some of these what they call islands. They call it an island. Night Island is no longer an island. Somebody chopped a hole in the dike, and the high tide took care of the rest of it. And then the feds came in, they chopped a lot of more holes. So you can go into Night Island, you can paddle into Night Island, but you gotta be careful. Let's look at the next one. Vallejo boat ramp, good parking. It's got some bathrooms. They may be open, they may not be open. Let's hit the next one. There's the bathroom. The bathrooms are okay, but they seem to be open on a whimsical sort of time schedule. It's Vallejo. Next one. Okay, we're back to the trip thing there. Let's go up to the next slide and see what that is. The USS Corey. Somebody had a great idea about 50, 60, 70 years ago that they got a pretty much a free destroyer after they decommissioned it. The Navy owned it. The Navy drove around in the ocean for a bunch of years, decommissioned it, and sold it to somebody that thought they were going to make it into a restaurant. They moored it in Vallejo for a while, and then they just took it up on the shore and just left it up there. And it's a great place. And let's see. Did I tell you around Night Island's 13 miles? Yeah. Okay, so the Corey is, if you paddle up to the Corey, it's only about, to the Corey, it's only about 5.5 miles up to the Corey. But it's like, it's a destination. You can get out there. If you go back to the Corey, I'll show you. Go back one slide. You can get out, there's a little beach to the south there, to the stern of the ship. It's a really good place to get out. I mean, it's always available. There's places to sit. There's places to sit on logs and stuff. And I don't recommend climbing around on it, although some of the paddlers have climbed around it. It's really not in a very good condition. Let's go up to Cuttings Wharf. Yeah, put your pointers on Cuttings Wharf. There we go. Good parking. They have a bathroom there. Keep going. And it really makes a lot of the north part of this whole event really accessible.
It looks like it's fairly newly redone.
Yeah, it's pretty new. You know, within the last 5 years, there used to be a nice little restaurant adjacent to this parking lot, but it closed. So onward and upward to the next one. What do we got? There's Cuttings again. Real nice ramp. A lot of fishermen, I've had problems with fishermen. They don't seem to understand that when their lines go across the boat ramp, they might snag a kayak. Next one. There we go. From Cuttings up to Kennedy Park, it's only like 3 miles. You know, it's a really nice afternoon paddle. You go up to Kennedy. They've got good parking there. You could do a shuttle, I suppose. You could have lunch, wait for the tide to change, and go back to Cuttings. Nice little park. What's next? Okay. Let's see what this one's going. We might be going to Hooterman. Ah. Okay, Cuttings to Hooterman's about 8 miles, I think. And you have to really, you have to pay attention to where you're going here. You go down the Napa River and you go into Hooterman Slough and you go all the way over to Hooterman, which is a launch ramp. There's parking there, a lot of parking, no restrooms, but there's a lot of tall bushes, so that's good. And you can do a really nice shuttle. You can do a shuttle between Hooterman and Cuttings, you know, if you only want to go one way. I would suggest that. It's a, you know, you go over there and there's good parking at both ends. So, and you go through a lot of really pretty wine country there, you know. It's to get to Hooterman, you have to go on Rammel Road, which is a road that goes along the north side of the bay. On one side, you'll be seeing wineries and wine fields, whatever they call them. And on the other side, you'll see San Pablo Bay. It's a beautiful drive. The road from Rammel down to the launch site is kind of rough. The Navy used to take care of it, but they don't anymore. The Navy's gone. Okay, what do we got next? That's Hooterman. That's a Hooterman ramp right there. And the next one. That's the Hooterman ramp. You're going to get a little muddy, but it's doable. It's usually doable if you're coming in on a high tide.
Hey, Don, I don't see the picture of the fish heads are usually there from the fishermen.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. But it's a fun paddle. It's a really good paddle. Let's see what's next. I think it's from Kennedy to Napa, maybe. Next slide.
Don, where's Wingo?
Be patient. Be patient, Gustavo. Be patient. This is Kennedy Park in Napa. Real good parking, real nice ramp, and it's close to Napa, you know, so you can jump in here and you go on up to Napa if you'd like to, and we will. Maybe on the next slide. Kayakers, people with kayaks. Anyway, next, they're on the way to Napa. Go under bridges, and finally you will get to, well, okay, that's the same Kennedy to Napa. Let's keep going. At downtown Napa, there's a dock there that is, they just put it in not too long ago, and you can get out there and you can walk up into the town, walk around. It's a real nice ramp. I think they have racks for kayaks there. I think they'd like you to use the racks rather than just throwing your boats all over the dock. Go back a couple. What's next? Next one. Okay, next one. Hooterman to Wingo. Go back one, please. Put in that Hooterman. Best way to do it is put in that Hooterman and ride down, ride down through all these sloughs, and you finally end up in Wingo. Wingo is a group of buildings that was originally built for the people coming out of San Francisco in the 1800s. They wanted to get away from San Francisco and the horses and everything. They would take steamboats up to Wingo, get out, and then take transportation, either carriages or I think there may have been a small train that ran up into Sonoma, and they would go up there and party for the weekend. One thing about Wingo, we've gone there before and we got out and walked around in Wingo and everything, but now there's some people that live adjacent to this property. The state owns this property now. But there's some people that are adjacent there and they're not really receptive. They're not really friendly people. So we go past Wingo just a little ways, maybe 100 yards, and we pull out onto the shore into the reeds and bushes, and we pull our boats up and we go have lunch on a drawbridge, an old drawbridge, a real cool drawbridge is there, that's there. And then we seal launch back and then head on back. But if you want to really get a feel for Wingo, go to a video of Norton Buffalo and Roy Rogers singing "There Ain't No Bread in a Bread Box." And they did a whole video on going to Wingo and singing. It's like you're back in the 1930s. It's really a cool video.
Don, I would beg to differ. I would think that seeing the movie Deliverance would be closer to Wingo than.
There's a cool, really neat little buildings. We did walk through there one time. Nobody bothered us, but you know, some of the people that are living up there now, and it's not a bad thing these people are living there. Otherwise, some clowns would have burnt this place down years ago. So they're protective of the place, but that's it. Go ahead. There we are, getting off the shore and heading on back. And is that it? If you go, yeah, stay there for a moment. To the west on Highway 37, to the west, as you go along the wildlife area, there's a new pond down there, an island number 1, and they flooded it within the last, I don't know, 8 years. When they flooded it, it was a big event. And I tried to get there, but they said, you're not important enough. But guess who was important enough? Penny Wells. So after they flood this thing, it's dramatic. They cut through and the water just rushes into this area that was previously dry. And later that afternoon, evening, I get a call from Penny and she says, Don, get your kayak. The next morning we show up at the put-in. There's a small put-in about 3 miles west of Valle. There's a launch ramp there that Penny had helped design, and we paddled all over. We were the first ones. Bay Area Sea Kayakers does it again. When we got out of the water, there was a video crew there, a newspaper, Vallejo video crew there. And they asked us a bunch of questions. And they took our pictures and everything, and we ended up in the Vallejo Times Herald. I still have a copy. And that's it. Any questions about Wingo or anything?
Hey, Don, I have a question about the tides when you want to go around Night Island. How do you figure those?
I wait for the last hour and a half of the flood. And you can get a pretty good kick up there. You know, from Vallejo, you can go up there at a pretty good clip, as I've said before. Duck into Dutchman Slough, And I wouldn't go into night. I went into Night Island yesterday, and it was like the African Queen. When I first got in there, there's a very defined waterway, and the water was moving along really well, but then it's slowed down and slowed down and slowed down. And pretty soon I couldn't tell where the water was going. I had this voice in my ear saying, "No more beer for you, Don." So, and then when I finally got back into Dutchman Slough, this big boat went by me. I mean, these sloughs are really deep. You're always going to have enough water to paddle around in these sloughs. And this, it looked like a state boat. It was about 30 feet long, big diesel, 2 diesels, and just went roaring by me. So that's it. I thought I was Humphrey Bogart there for a while.
Hey, Don, can you put in at Wingo, or is there any place to put in there?
No. Well, there's a few people that have done some videos walking down a Wingo, but I think they let some cars through there. I think you have to have permission to go to drive down to Wingo, and then you can go across. If you were allowed to do that, you go across the drawbridge and go to wherever the hell it goes. And but no, you can't put in at Wingo. You can put in at Cuttings, you can put in at Kennedy, Green Islands, Marginal, V-Town is good. Oh, we did a really neat paddle from Black Point over where Highway 37 crosses the Petaluma River. A bunch of us took off from there and rode the ebb out a couple years ago, and we went along the shore. We took the ebb out in the San Pablo Bay, went along the shore, and we went into Sonoma Creek and rode the flood on up the Hoodaman. We had to set up a shuttle. That was a real cool paddle.
I was on that paddle.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, I've been really interested in doing a paddle up to Napa, and one concern that my fiance has had was just sort of the safety of our boats if we did decide we wanted to spend a little time in the town. I'm wondering whether you can speak to that at all. I mean, I wasn't particularly concerned, but it would probably be helpful to hear other people say that too.
If you lock I think there's a lot of things you can lock your boat to while they're on the dock in Napa. And I've never heard of it. You know, it's Napa, it's not Vallejo. You know, and even in Vallejo, I've been there recently, and a lot of people mill around in a lot of these places in the middle of the day. So, but how long would you want to be there? I mean, just going around in the town?
Yeah, just, do a wine tasting, something like that.
Yeah. Lock your boats up to some of the things that are on that dock. I'd do that.
Thanks.
Don, how far is it from Kennedy Park to Napa round trip?
Oh, I think it's about maybe 6-7 miles round trip.
Roger, thanks.
It's kind of parts of it are really interesting. I think there is even a put in somewhere between Kennedy and Napa. I think you go by some really interesting houses and everything. And I think there's a yacht club there, and I think there's a launch ramp somewhere in Napa, but I'm not sure where. I've never used it.
There's a launch ramp, a very narrow launch ramp, just north of the public dock in Napa, kind of underneath the First Street Bridge. It can be muddy, and you need wheels to get your boat down there, but it's free. And
oh, that was something else. If you go past Napa, there's a couple more miles you can go past, or maybe a mile and a half past Napa. And there's a couple of places where you can get out. There's a good takeout there, like small beaches and stuff that are good to get out on. And, and there's trees, and you can have a lunch there and everything if you want to go past Napa.
Don, can you talk about water quality? I would probably have some concern in the muddy water to do roll or rescue practice or something like that. There used to be a lot of heavy metals in the mud. Do you know what the situation is right now?
Heavy metals. No, I have no idea what. You get a lot of flushing at the lower end. Lower end, and there's a lot of water going in and out through Mare Island Strait there. If you get tired of paddling and you want to do something else, go on to Mare Island. It's open to the public. You can go on and go all the way to the south end of Mare Island, and there's a reserve down there, kind of a nature preserve, and you can go up on top of this hill, and you'll have a most spectacular view of the Carquinez Strait and Mare Island Strait joining and going out into San Pablo Bay. And you can see all of San Pablo Bay. There's also, there's a cemetery there that they're just refinished and everything. They've just done it over. Sir Francis Scott Key's daughter is buried there, along with a bunch of Russian sailors. And if you walk down into further to the north in Mare Island, there's a whole bunch of mansions, Captain's Row. All these captains that were on Mare Island, each one of them got a mansion. I mean, huge buildings, and one of them is now leased or rented to a winery. And you go in there, and these benches are beautiful, and you have a glass of wine and wander all over the place.
Okay. So I've lived in Benicia, the Carquinez Strait, for 20 years and enjoyed a variety of paddles from 1 hour to all day. They're kind of additive. We'll start short and get longer as we go on. All of them are fun-sized treats, and the conditions are fun-sized too, sort of mini bay conditions. Whoops, Larry's already covered a bit of planning. I'll just emphasize for the Carquinez, currents are really important. There's a station for currents by the Carquinez Bridge, and then there's one out beyond the Benicia Martinez Bridge. Currents determine where you can go and when, which direction, and tides where you can land or not. And then there's the famous Carquinez Bridge caused by advection. The Delta area getting hot during the summer brings up some big winds in the summer on the Carquinez. But we get a lot of glassy water days too, so don't let that discourage you. Just check the weather, do your planning at the trip planner. We're going to take a quick look at both sides of the Carquinez. I've identified 4 always launchable put-ins and a variety of places to take out and look around, take a break. We're going to start on the east side on the Benicia shore. First up, the bottom of East 5th Street is Benicious Marina. The put-in is on the eastern end. And this sheltered harbor is a good place for a shakedown cruise, like for a new boat, new gear, a new paddler. You can easily spend an hour here meandering around the boats. So it's a nice sheltered short paddle. Here's Don striding down the ramp there, or next to the ramp, there's an L-shaped floating dock, and that's where we can launch from in there. The other picture of baskers is the guest dock, and kayakers can tie up or haul out on the shallow side there, leaving room for the yachts. And this does have a yachty vibe in this harbor. The yacht club offers some events, including the opening day on the strait, and kayakers have been blessed at the Portuguese blessing of the fleet at that event. First Street Beach is a few blocks west. You go to the bottom of the street where there's a roundabout, swing out onto the city wharf there and park, and then carry or wheel your boat to the beach just beyond the roundabout. Amenities in walking distance include numerous restaurants and wine bars, and the Mare Island Brewery tap room is coming soon. And mere steps from the put-in, See's Candy is sold in the old train station. Notice I've circled on the chart though, tide rips may be present on a strong ebb, but they're easily avoided or entered with glee. There's a little view of the mini-sized tide rips and some baskers in front of the old train station. The beach looks a little rugged and pokey, but there's plenty of room for boats to the west of it. Both of those put-ins give you access to Benicia Bay. This is the long blue stretch on your screen, all of it out of harm's way, beyond the North Channel markers. There are several little coves to explore, and they all have public beaches within them. If you don't want to deal with currents under the pier or by the islands there at First Street, just put in that we're going to look at a little bit further on. Here are some of the sights you'll see in Benicia Bay. There's interesting architecture, maybe some good bird watching, a mini secret sand, I'll get it yet, glass beach, and some Tafoni sandstone formations. Then we come to the West 9th Street boat ramp. The picture here is of a historic ark. This is what a fisherman's house on a barge would have looked like. Now it's mounted up out of the water. You have to do some gunk holing in those coves to find fun things like this. The picture shows the West 9th Street boat ramp way off to the edge because I'm using a booklet chart. More about that later. The nice thing about the West 9th Street, there's lots of parking and it provides direct access to Benicia Bay where currents are negligible. You can go out on a flood or ebb if you're just going to hang out for the couple miles of Benicia Bay. It's also a good starting point to go further west. Here's some photos, 9th Street ending it with a splash in the water. And there's a landmark here. Commodore Jones Point sits on a sandstone bluff and the flagpole on top is visible from a distance. So this will help guide you back to your car. Baskers often use the floating docks though, and avoid the boat traffic between the floating docks. The Crescent Beach in the Cove makes a really nice landing spot for lunch most of the time, but it's muddy on a low tide and completely absent on a king tide. A few blocks west, there's another public park that marks the shipwright Matthew Turner's shipyard. These days, you might see a new tall ship on San Francisco Bay named the Matthew Turner in his honor. Southampton Bay there is very shallow. We usually just cut across it, but at a low tide, you might view a few other wrecks there. Dillon Point is our next landmark, very noticeable throughout the strait. The high tide marker, excuse me, the North Channel marker is onshore there. So the ship lanes come really close, but you can get past there. You're headed out on an ebb tide. Sometimes on a strong ebb tide with opposing wind, you'll get some tide rips there. Again, mini yellow bluff conditions, so fun size. We'll be looking next at Glen Cove and Elliott Cove, continuing further west. Elliott Cove offers respite from a windy day, but whoops, we're on Glen Cove, sorry. Given sufficient tide height to paddle to shore, Glen Cove's a peaceful place to enjoy the view. You might contemplate the double-bladed paddlers in Thule boats of countless centuries past who enjoyed feasts of shellfish here. We used to find broken shells when there was just a shell mound in place. Next up is Elliott Cove, where Glen Cove Marina is. It's the one you can really escape wind on because it's lined with hills. There's picnic tables on the west side and the Bay Ridge Trail has an access point there. The big building you see was the Carquinez Lightkeeper's home. It's been moved from its original location. I've quit using the guest dock here that sits beside the lighthouse station because they've made it into an event station, or excuse me, an event place. There might be a lot of parking issues if there's a wedding reception or something, but a smaller group could probably get in. You have to carry your boats down a ramp, turn a hard corner to get to this guest dock, but it's a nice place to start. The fog shot is just a reminder, hug the shore on the Carquinez when you can't see the ships. Again, the advection currents of the summer can bring in a lot of fog. Your next step, if you want to lengthen your trip, would be to cross under the Carquinez Bridge, ideally on a late ebb or slack tide or early in the flood. And the Maritime Academy in Morrow Cove is a good place to turn back after you visit the Golden Bear, the Maritime Academy's training ship. Next, we'll take a walk on the wild side, the Contra Costa shoreline. The only put in I like on this side is the Martinez Marina because you don't have to go across railroad tracks to take your boat to it. it's the sort of place that's favored by fishermen. The boat ramps can be busy, so with a big group of baskers, we sometimes use the lawn next to it to stage the boats and then carry them down to the ramps or the floating docks. There's evidence of the old commuter ferry days there as well. Around the corner from the marina exit is Alhambra Creek, and it's a lovely little flat water paddle if you like to bird watch. You need to be on a rising or flood tide to get in there, and to locate it, in the picture with the rectangle, I'm inside looking out, but if you were outside looking in, you want to look for those same little feral palm trees to discern where this is amidst all the tules. You can go almost, yeah, you can go under about 3 bridges and get downtown. Not that you can get out, but you might see beaver or otter. As you continue west, there's plenty of shallows to paddle and keep outside of the ship channel. Ozol Pier is a prominent landmark, and you can paddle under it. That Ozol is useful to find your way around on when you're coming from a distance. In this picture, you can see the shipwreck of the schooner Forster. There's a bit of a beach there on anything but a high tide. You can get out for a break on a short paddle, or just jump out to look at the marker about the schooner. To the left of that image is the north channel marker off Ozol. The whole ship channel is really close to shore on the south shore. There's good bird watching too. There's an osprey hanging out. They like the trees on the parklands on this side. Next, this photo kind of illustrates the town and country difference between the north shore where Benicia is and the south shore. It also shows the riprap that interferes with getting out most of the places along the south shore, except for our next 2 stops. We're going to take a look at Port Costa, where there is fine dining and casual dining. There's the famous warehouse bar with hundreds of different types of bottled beers. And that's where there is a restroom, especially if you give them some custom. And then Eckley, where there's another shipwreck to see. Eckley has a nice picnic ground as well. Here's Port Costa. Notice the large group of baskers drawn to Port Costa in the top image have a nice big low tide beach. The smaller group to the right arrived on a high tide, and we had to kind of fling our boats every which way. Port Costa is colorful. Usually a couple of people will mind the boats while others cross the 2 railroad tracks in a low wall to get over there and explore. But it is totally worth it. As Monty Python would say, Port Costa is something other than else. The decaying piers of a bygone age will offer your opportunity to test your ruddering skills, especially when the current is swift. The wharfs used to go on for 5 miles, but less so now. But it takes us to Port Costa. This was once a brickyard. Here's a bunch of baskers exploring an old office building there. There's a nice lunch beach west of the fishing pier, right by the wreck of the side wheeler Garden City. Baskers like to check this out. It sure has changed over 20 years. If you continue on to the Carquinez Bridge, you can admire the architecture of the old and new bridge and wander further to see the Crockett boat basin. It's rather interesting, if a bit rough. From there, you can see where that old lighthouse keeper's home was, along with the tower, on a pier that extended out into the mouth of the Mare Island Strait. And here's a look at C&H. A big plant with a company town from back in the day. Of course, baskers going close by the ship made sure there was no smoke coming out of the stacks, no tugs active, those are very dangerous, and it's well tied up, not going anywhere. I'll make one quick comment about the strait. I'm going to back up to this image. We come to a point where the Carquinez Strait and the Mare Island Strait converge and flow into San Pablo Bay. This is an advanced planning skill to make the corner. Don's an expert at it. The problem is that both of them flood and both of them ebb at the same time. So you have to round it at slack tide ideally, and you'll still be slogging either way because you're going to be going into an opposing current. Tricky business. But not so tricky business. Just want to end with some resources for you. Images were from booklet charts, which are available free online and are set up so you can print each individual page on your home printer. Kind of handy, very educational too. There's lots to read in there, including excerpts from the Coast Pilot. I just love the Coast Pilot. It's really riveting reading. Charts don't have map keys per se. Any chart you open, you need chart 1 to read the symbols in the United States. And that's now available online for free. These books are so 20th century. Also available is the Coast Pilot, which now contains the navigation rules. As kayakers, we're responsible to know the inland navigation rules when we're on these waters. And it's just comforting to know. Use your charts, know where the channel is, and know what is going on there via the rules. My biggest favorite cheat sheet is the tide log because every day's graphic page, and obviously I'm a visual storyteller here, every page has under it the ebb currents for that day at the Golden Gate, but also the bottom line is the Carquinez Strait. So that speeds your trip planning here really quickly. And I put a lot of hiking icons in because if you're taking a short paddle, you might want to extend your day while you're at the Carquinez. I took all these pictures and there are some trails, obviously, with really great views of the strait. Thank you for listening. I hope you have great adventures on the Carquinez. Any questions for me?
Not a question, but I'd like to add one really practical thing, which is often when we're trying to plan a paddle and the bay is either ebbing all day or flooding all day. And so the question is, what do we do with the currents? If we go up to Carquinez Strait, say Martinez, the currents are often offset enough so you can do a paddle where you go one way with the flood, one way with the ebb. So it's kind of offset enough in time from the rest of the bay to make it really convenient.
Good point to bring up.
I might have one question that might also be a suggestion. I once paddled out of the Antioch Marina and there's a lot of interesting islands up there. It's also an easy put in with a low dock. There's a wildlife preserve there. Scott's Restaurant is there. I don't know how many other people might have paddled out of there. The Antioch Marina seems real nice too.
Which direction do you go? What direction do you go, David? West or east?
I've only been once, and I went to the west and paddled around a wildlife preserve that was just outside of the marina. I was able to get pretty deep into there. There were mute swans with cygnets. It was, I think I might have seen a mink. It was quite idyllic.
That's fantastic. I'd like to add to mentioning the Antioch. There used to be a basker who lives across the country now here. His name is Randy, who paddled extensively in the Delta. And the best piece of advice he gave me for paddling that area, including around Antioch, is to get USGS quad maps and make notes as you go. Another couple, Paula and Rich, that used to paddle out there a lot would agree. You can get lost in the sloughs. And so keep track of where you are at all times.
Okay, so we're pretty much the end of the time, but we have a lot of really experienced people on board. Does anybody have something that we really missed that they think would be a good, quick suggestion?
We're talking about paddling up around Antioch and Pittsburgh. One of the best paddles ever is going in search of the sea fox. The sea fox, if you go to the Maritime Museum in San Francisco, there's a wheelhouse sitting there. They chopped the wheelhouse off this old tug, and now you can go and look at the wheelhouse. But if you want to see the wreck. The wreck is out of Pittsburgh there. You can go through some really interesting islands and go across some small bays. There's a lot of boat wrecks up there. When people don't want boats anymore, they just get rid of them up there. And that's one of them. That's a pretty big wreck. I think Jim has been there, right?
Yeah, you sponsored you had a paddle there, and it was great. It was I think there must have been 4 or 5 of us. I don't remember exactly. I got pictures.
Anybody else with a quick one?
Yeah, I think you could paddle out of Bay Point also up there. There's a nice park up there. And they even loaned us wheels to wheel our kayaks down to the launch.
Yeah, I think that park's been recently refurbished, that
Yeah.
launch at Bay Point.
Oh, yeah.
I'd add quick that Sassoon City has a boat
Yeah.
ramp and good paddling up there. I just drew the line at the Carquinez because the Delta would be a whole nother subject, just the West Delta alone.
Okay. Any other questions before we sign off?
I do have one question. Will this webinar be archived on the BASK YouTube channel?
It will.
I recorded it and I hope it will, yep.
Okay, with that, I'd like to thank all the presenters and all of you for showing up.
I have
Steve?
I have a real quick question.
Yeah,
At a very low tide, is Ferry Point okay to land and launch in a fiberglass boat?
Yes,
All right, that's all I need to know.
easy peasy.
Larry, I want to thank Larry for organizing this and all the presenters. That was great. It was an incredibly comprehensive tour from the south through the central to the north part of the bay. Thank you, Jan, for recording. There's usually with a little delay of maybe a week or two, Jonathan takes these, puts them in a standard format and then posts them on the BASK YouTube channel. You just go to YouTube and search for Bay Area Sea Kayakers and you'll find all of this. So thanks everybody for showing up and come next time. Watch for Buzz for more detail.
thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Steve. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Steve.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Steve.
Larry.
Thanks, Steve, and all the presenters.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good. Excellent.
John.
Okay.